Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Can I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off the video when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "Speak" in the Teams chat function, and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we can deal with the business as effectively as possible. Usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write "Leave" in the Teams chat function and then join. This will allow us to monitor member presence. And that was the same message in Morse code. So can I first go on to sediment apologies and also I'll approve members' remote participation. So Tracy, could you provide the sediment indicating who's participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Thanks, Chairman. We've currently got 8 members present in the chambers at Annan. We've got 1 member in person, which is the Chair, and not present at the start of the meeting are the Vice Chair, Councillor Wilson, Councillor McClelland and Councillor Tate.
Thanks, Tracy. And item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make at this time?
No.
Councillor Dryborough, I see you've got a chat there.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Declaration item number the report on the discretionary budget. I'm declaring that I am a volunteer for New Start Recycle, but I feel that my interest is such that I'll still remain within the discussions.
Okay, thanks, Archie. And Sean, you're there as well?
Same as Archie, the same organisation, still volunteering there, but we'll remain in the meeting.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. We'll now go on to the minute of the previous meeting of 2nd September. You'll have the minute and have had the chance to look over it. Are we happy to approve it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. On to item 4 then, we have the Police Scotland performance report for Annandale and Eskdale from 1st of April 2019 to 31st of March 2020. Members will note positive performances across a wide variety of crime categories, with reductions recorded across petty assaults, housebreaking, serious assaults and crimes of indecency. The number of Group 1 crimes of violence has seen a substantial percentage increase, albeit the numbers are relatively small, which I know can affect the percentages. And from reading the report, this indicator now includes a new measure relating to crimes of domestic abuse, of which there were 10 during the reporting period. Around road safety, it's sad to note that the number of people killed on our roads increased during the reporting period, and the number of people detected speeding within our region remains stubbornly high. We have Chief Inspector Stephen Stiff available in Teams to assist members with any questions. Can I ask Stephen if there's anything you'd like to add to the report before passing over to members?
Chair, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I think you've pretty much summarised the position there, Chair. We have a fairly good and strong performance throughout Annandale and Eskdale, and in fact throughout Dumfriesshire as a whole. As you point out, in terms of Group 1 crimes, 43 crimes of violence is too many by anybody's standards. However, I do note that in terms of serious assaults, I think it's important to acknowledge too that many of those are, as I've highlighted in previous meetings, Chair, by virtue of definition only, somebody who maybe receives a laceration that needs a suture or a paper suture to sort of fix the sort of skin mending again is technically classified as a serious assault. I think it's important to know if it provides confidence that there are very, very few what I would call stranger serious assaults in the region. The majority of the serious assaults that we do record are actually between parties who are associates and know each other and have fallen out as a consequence of a natural coming together. So I think it is assuring to note that we don't have too many sort of stranger serious assaults. And that is also true in terms of robbery too. Whilst we've had one or two robberies, one in which included a taxi driver being robbed and another in relation to a male who lived in Lockerbie. Beyond those, again, I think it's reassuring to note that the vast majority of robberies that do record across Dumfriesshire, which includes Annandale and Eskdale, are committed between associates who know each other, and as usual, a sort of background and an antecedent to that particular crime taking place. In terms of common assaults, Chair, I'm delighted to see that those are reducing year on year. Again, I am conscious, Chair, that the figures we're talking about this morning are a number of months old already, but I can report that the downward trend continues. I have data which is accurate up to Monday of this week. And again, if it offers members of the meeting any assurance, then those figures are continuing in the downward trend. So violence overall is down. Robberies are down, common assaults are down, etc., which I think is a really good news picture for all the residents of Annandale and Eskdale. Interestingly too, in terms of common assaults, a continuing theme over a number of years now has been almost a third of those are domestic abuse related. A further third of those are committed within residential premises and private, so to speak, which traditionally makes it more challenging for us to police. Leaving about 33% being committed within the public space, where we can be fairly proactive. So again, it's interesting just to note that trend continues too. Moving on, specifically in relation to drugs, again, just the proactivity of our officers. I launched, Chair, in recent months what we call a tasking and coordinating process throughout Dumfries and Galloway. I chair that personally, and that process is intended to have a look at our highest tariff, our most problematic people and places. What I don't focus on is percentages and performance data. I focus on people, those that are committing crime and those who are victims of crime. And in relation to that tasking and coordinating process, what we do is on a fortnightly basis identify those individuals that are causing the most risk in community and target those very specifically. And that targeting has seen an increase in the number of detections for drugs in relation to other sort of offending too, and that's something that I'll be looking to continue, not just over the short term, but for the long term as well. As I highlighted, Chair, this may well be my last area committee before I retire in March next year. What I can offer, though, is a guarantee that that tasking coordinate process will continue beyond my time in the police and will become a feature which undoubtedly drives performance for the division as a whole, even when I'm gone. In terms of drug supply, one of the things that members may be interested in is a growing trend, not only in Annandale and Eskdale, right across Scotland, sadly, in relation to the increasing number of drugs deaths that we experience, which is tragic for a number of reasons. Again, I can offer some reassurances that, like other areas of Scotland, we focus very heavily in that. We're involved very actively with the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership, where we examine every case of a drugs death to establish if there's any pattern. Is there any pattern in terms of the type and commodities or quantities, I should say, of the drugs that are being taken? What we do know from those exercises is that there is a common theme of poly-drug misuse, which seems to be a pattern, and a lot of people who are perhaps longer-term drug users seem to be subject to many of the drugs deaths that we've been looking at. So it is a common theme throughout Scotland, but through that Alcohol and Drugs Partnership, we do examine every drugs death and really test ourselves about is there anything that we could have done, not just in terms of policing, but across all agencies, health, social services, other supports that are available for people, just to make sure that drug users are getting the support they need to try and prevent people succumbing where at all possible. Chair, I'll maybe move on just very quickly to the road safety and the crime, as you pointed out, just one or two very pertinent stats already at the opening comments in the meeting there. Again, some of the proactivity I talked about in terms of that tasking and coordinating process, I also focus on roads policing issues as well, and that has seen an increase in our proactivity, round about those that we know drive recklessly on our roads, which has seen an increase in the detections there. We also look at disqualified driving and non-insured drivers as well, just to make sure that we are as proactive as we possibly can in relation to those, which in my view, my own experience in terms of roads policing within Police Scotland, tend to be indicative of other offending as well. So that is all included within the tasking and coordinating process on a fortnightly basis as well. But overall, Chair, I think what we have throughout Annandale and Eskdale is an improving picture of performance. It's very strong performance compared to other areas in Scotland. And again, whilst I do acknowledge that for all the reasons we acknowledge, that report is already a number of months old. The data that I have, which is as recent as Monday this week, indicates that those positive trends continue. For example, common assault remains down over 18% across the area, and house breakings in particular, which I always keep a very close eye on in terms of the dwelling houses, which create the biggest impact for victims, is actually down 35% across my area, which I think is a very positive picture too. We'll not be complacent though, we never are. We'll continue to do everything we can to work with our communities and to try and drive crime down and to tackle those that are causing the greatest harm and risk. And again, I would like to just acknowledge what I think is a fairly special relationship we have with elected members across the area and indeed members of our community, because it is a partnership approach to deterring and detecting and preventing crime. And I think we've got something special in Dumfries and Galloway that we would all do well to retain and to keep hold of for as long as I possibly can. I think it definitely demonstrates the cohesive relationship we have with local communities, and it pays dividends in terms of our crime rates across the region.
Thanks very much, Stephen, and I think we'd all probably echo your final sentiments there. Just before I let members in, there's a few members with questions. Clearly the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership, I think that meets in December, is the next meeting, so I'm getting a sort of growing awareness of issues, the scope and scale, if you like, of exactly what's involved in terms of our alcohol and drug work in the region, so I'm looking forward to finding out more about that. Obviously, the reporting period, as you say, is about 6 months out of date now, and it's welcome that you've got the up-to-date figures. I was going to ask about domestic abuse and drug offences during the restriction period. Obviously, you've touched on that a little bit, but I'll defer now to members. I think we've got Councillor Brodie to speak first.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning. The conquer season's over, but I'm going to raise an old chestnut, and Stephen will probably be waiting for it. Ask us at the beginning of the report as councillors to examine trends, among other things, and that's really important in holding public services to account. But we'll still only get last year's data to compare it with. If you compare that with police, fire and rescue, we've got data trends going from 2014 to 2020. So we really can't really examine the report properly, because we need the trends over a number of years to see how things are going. For example, the road safety statistics are quite alarming. Some of the bad figures, but we need to be able to put that in context over a number of years. So I think I raised it the last time we had a chance, and we were told that Police Scotland were looking at that to see how they could make figures more meaningful. So I'll ask Stephen how that's going.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks.
Sorry, I was just going to pass over to you, Stephen. I appreciate this has come up at a number of area committees, and I know Richard has been diligent in asking for at least a 3-year report and comparison period. So can you enlighten us again?
Sadly, yes, I can, and I do welcome the question from Councillor Brodie, and like everyone at the meeting, I do think there's some value in at least a 3-year comparison figure, which allows us to show longer term trends. So I absolutely get that they want to have that information. Sadly, I've not been able to resolve it for you in the sort of early course, Councillor Brodie, because it very much needs an IT fix to be able to achieve that. Which sounds like a bit of an excuse, but in many ways there is a national IT programme ongoing just now, and what I'm looking forward to is a revised performance framework through our IT process, which may well bring back that 3-year trend that we used to have under our previous reporting regime. To do that at the moment would take a significant amount of manual time for officers or staff within my area to actually pull that information together and retain it and do that manually. If I'm honest, there's something here about competing priorities in terms of if we were to undertake that work and do it manually. What we need to do is stop doing other things in terms of, collecting information that would lead to perhaps being just as effective in terms of crime prevention and detection. So I've had to swallow a little bit of a pride, to be honest, Councillor Brodie, in terms of not being able to fix it as early for you as I would have ordinarily liked. I am assured that the IT programme is underway, and whether it's something we can deliver in due course, I'm certainly hoping that will be the case. My understanding is that the wider figures, though, are discussed at scrutiny at that level, and that being the case, again, we could look at if that could be then brought down to area committee level as well. So it's been a challenging one for me, Councillor Brodie. I don't think I've got the answer for you, or perhaps hoping for, but I have been given some assurances that the IT process or IT developments, I should say, that are being taken forward just now may be able to bring a resolution for that.
Thanks, Stephen. Richard, are you happy with that, or do you want to add further comment?
It's the answer I expected, but I'll come in again after that. I've got another question later on.
Thank you. We've now got Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Stephen, obviously, and thank you for the support you've given me over the many years with the armed forces stuff that I do in my other role with the council. I'm just looking at it, and it's quite right to raise the awareness that this report is probably 6 months overdue into the area committee side of things, and any sort of increase in any of the rates is usually small, but it's backed up by a large percentage issue. And I look at things like the housebreaking detection rate at 19.1%. I mean, even that's double the English police force's detection rate. When you look at some of the sad things I look at night now that I'm stuck in house with, the emergency side of things. But I do want to raise sort of one question with you, Stephen, which is maybe a concern for me, and it's about the drug supply, especially on the A74. I do remember an issue not that long ago about the potential for Lockerbie Station was on a list of potential closures, and I'm just wondering if you can update on that side of things, because obviously that's really important for the A74 that we see our traffic cops getting involved in that side of things. So I'm just wondering if there's any update on that.
Thanks, Archie.
No, thank you.
Sorry, right, I'll tell you what, I'll just let you answer directly rather than go through the chair, because it's much easier. Sorry, Stephen, on you go.
No, my apologies, Jeff, if I butted in there. But no, Councillor, thanks for the question, and I'll perhaps come back on both counts there. There are absolutely no plans whatsoever to close Lockerbie Station. I think we entered into a venture down in Gretna, which I believe has been a success in terms of increasing visibility and moving our police presence closer into the heart of the community in Gretna. But in terms of Lockerbie, it is absolutely an effective operational hub, both for the township of Lockerbie and the local communities there, but perhaps just as importantly, in terms of how we operate, also in the A74 Corridor 2. The amount of drugs that we're pulling off the A74 motorway is quite incredible, and I would use that word very deliberately. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of drugs being pulled off on an annual basis, down to the proactivity of our local staff and roads policing, and we would not see any value in depleting that and eroding that in any sort of fashion at all. So Lockerbie is an absolute staple in terms of our service delivery. It's absolutely essential that station remains, and there are no plans that I have seen at any level, Councillor, which would even indicate that station has been discussed for closure. So if that offers some reassurances, and I'd like to think too that if it was being considered, I would certainly know about it, and it certainly isn't, and nor would I enter into any discussions which may bring about its closure either. So you have my complete backing in relation to that, and I also know that once I do move on beyond March, the rest of the SMT would be of a similar view too. If I can maybe just touch on the housebreaking, you're absolutely right in terms of percentages can fluctuate wildly given our low numbers. The recent housebreaking figures just now, and I'm talking about dwelling houses in particular, is down 35%. Our detection rate has increased to 34%, which is would confer favourably throughout any area in Scotland. Clearly, 34% isn't as high as I personally would like it to be, but what we do is clearly identify the significant long-term harm that can be caused to victims of house break-ins, given the intrusive nature of those crimes, and we do everything we possibly can to work within ourselves, our specialist departments, and with our partners externally to make sure we detect as many of those as we can. Sadly, because of the very nature of our geography in Dumfries and Galloway, travelling criminals continue to see or to think we are an easy target. But again, even beyond the reporting period that we have on the table today, we have detected a number, and I'm talking about multiple travelling criminals that have been coming into Annandale and Eskdale in particular, Eastern Europeans travelling through the night, deliberately targeting their areas and stealing property and heading back down over the border. We detected a number of those in recent months, and I think that's a positive picture as well, and perhaps reflects on the heartfelt way that local officers actually serve their communities, because most of those officers are actually resident in these areas themselves and really take these matters to heart and do what they can to try and detect them. So a positive and improving picture there in relation to the house break-ins as well, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I've got Councillor Marshall up next.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Stephen, for what I think is an encouraging report. And you know the performance across Annandale and Eskdale. It's very encouraging to see. Obviously, the report is 2019 to March 2020, but you have given us an update as well over the last 6 months, and I do appreciate as well. The Police Scotland in our area have given us updates on the challenges, etc. of COVID-19. I just wondered, because we've got you here, I just wondered what challenges or new challenges or unique challenges the police have had to encounter during these strange times. Just your reflection on that, and also just I know that Police Scotland and across there's a lot of kind of movement of staff, etc. And I just wondered, from an Annandale and Eskdale perspective, if you could maybe send us an up-to-date list of the contact names, etc. at the stations, and who we contact to kind of save time, even if it's just the email addresses and who we go to, because I know there's been a number of staff moving about, which is normal.
No, thank you. I'll certainly do that in terms of the updated contacts list too, and I do encourage local sergeants based at stations who are really at the heart of that local service delivery, both to keep in touch with community councils and elected members in relation to things that are of concern. So I will send out an updated list, Chair, to all the elected members, just so people have that and they know exactly who to go to for those direct conversations, if that's helpful. Beyond that, an interesting one in relation to COVID. It's obviously been a really unusual year for everyone. There is now no normal. People keep talking about the new norm. I'm not quite sure what that is, because we're changing almost on a weekly basis. In terms of policing, it has been a rather extraordinary year, and back in sort of March, April, we weren't really sure exactly how this was going to play out for us and for local communities in terms of crime. What we have noticed is that in some respects, the antisocial behaviour, if you like, was one area that we anticipated would increase as people perhaps were restricted in terms of their normal day-to-day activities and weren't able to circulate within their own sort of friends, etc. If that would lead to an increase in antisocial behaviour. In some quarters it has, and what we have noticed is that some of the activity would normally expect to see outside licensed premises, just due to the nature of our nighttime economy. We fully anticipated that would move out into residential areas and hence affect a greater number of people within those communities too. In some respects, that has happened, thankfully, and again, I would go back to a comment I made earlier on about the vast majority of people in Dumfries and Galloway and in our communities have behaved very responsibly and very appropriately in relation to the COVID crisis that's been we've all faced in recent months. Sadly, as is always the case, there is a small minority of people who choose to ignore the rules, the regulations, the advice and guidance that ministers are giving us. And we have found quite a challenge to try and find the right balance between education, between encouraging people to do the right thing and not necessarily resorting to enforcement at the earliest stage. I think that was probably exactly the right thing to do in many ways, because some of the guidance was changing rapidly. Some people had access to that guidance fairly easily. Those who don't necessarily keep up with the news and don't read things online perhaps weren't as au fait with the guidelines as the rest of us might have been. So we adopted a process of trying to educate, trying to encourage people to do the right thing rather than rely on enforcement. As the months have rolled on, however, and clearly we've seen peaks and troughs of the COVID virus affecting our local communities, we are starting to move into an area where we will perhaps, if I can use the term, we will accelerate through those education, those encouragement sort of levels a bit more quickly, if that makes sense, and arrive at an enforcement stage a bit more quickly than might have done in the early months of COVID. And I think that's only because a good number of months down the line now, I think there's a reasonable expectation that everybody knows exactly where we are and exactly what's expected of them. And we have seen a number of fixed penalty tickets issued to members of the community recently, and the majority of that relates to house parties where we've got multiple associates congregate in one household, which sadly results in disruptive behaviour, alcohol being dragged to excess and a lot of noise, and of course that then impacts upon other residents in the community who are doing the right thing and trying to abide by the restrictions and so forth. So we have seen an increase in number of fixed penalty tickets there. In terms of our own resourcing and staffing picture, again, we've actually been quite lucky in Dumfries and Galloway to date, and I'm going to touch wood just in the hope that that continues, in that we haven't seen some of the spikes that other areas of Scotland have had within our own workforce within policing, which has allowed us to keep our numbers up and our proactivity high across our region. We have seen just in recent weeks just a number of people who are self-isolating because of contact and trace. Occasionally when we're dealing with vulnerable people in the communities, whether it's elderly who perhaps need some immediate care as we wait in an ambulance, for example, there have been a small number of officers that have had to self-isolate because it's subsequently come to our attention that those vulnerable people have tested positive for COVID. Our staff are fully equipped with PPE, as you would expect, and they wear that on all occasions to try and reduce the risks. And so far, our assessment is that has worked and allowed our people to remain, operating in uniform in their communities, doing the job that you would want them to do. So, in a nutshell, I guess it has been a challenging period. It's been a changing picture almost on a weekly, if not daily basis. But we've certainly striven to keep ourselves up to date with that, to respond appropriately and proportionately, and to assist and encourage our communities across Dumfries and Galloway to do the same. And as you might recall, Councillor, I've tried where I can to share information with elected members where there's been significant changes to the legislation too. So in a nutshell, I think the main areas of challenge for us have been the house parties, the instances where people just haven't chosen to comply with the restrictions in the way that we would ordinarily expect. We've dealt with that proportionately, but we're at a stage now where we expect maybe a bit more compliance and fixed penalty tickets are being issued where, as a last resort, we've tried previously, but they're not quite getting the message. In terms of the crime trends, again, you might argue that the lower number of people on the street might have seen a natural reduction in terms of house break-ins, etc. But again, equally, it could be argued that as people, see vulnerabilities and properties that are perhaps vacant, one of the areas I did expect to see perhaps an increase in activity in was house break-ins to commercial premises, because particularly during periods of lockdown and shutdown, those premises are perhaps vacant for longer than they ordinarily would have been, and potentially therefore more vulnerable to criminals. We put in place at a very early stage an operational plan that was designed to try and identify where those vulnerable properties were most likely to be. And if we weren't, for example, responding to issues outside the licensed premises because they were closing earlier, what we were doing with that extra time was focusing on the vulnerable properties out there that may have otherwise been targeted to crime. And again, touch wood, whilst there's no exact science to it, I think the performance figures that we have just now indicate that some of that has paid off, and we haven't seen a huge escalation in the number of commercial break-ins that we maybe anticipated we would have done. So again, I don't know if that's helpful. I'd be happy to answer any more specific questions if you feel I haven't offered enough value there.
No, that's great, a very comprehensive answer. Just one quick question though, and it's based on probably one of the most recent Scottish Government restrictions, is with regards to the border between England and Scotland. And what does policing of the border mean effectively, to you on the front line?
Again, a very good question actually, and a challenging one in many respects too. We do understand that obviously the restrictions over the border are there. We know that there's been a political debate in relation to that, and a balance has sought to be struck in relation to that. Our position is, both nationally and locally within Dumfries and Galloway Council, is that we will not proactively engage in things like road checks or stopping vehicles routinely to ask questions about where people have come from and where they're going to. Because that would be a huge exercise to try and undertake. I think it would be an ineffective one, even if we did try and put resource to it, and in a sense that would be disproportionate. What we have, though, done is increased our presence round about areas such as the Gretna Gateway, and we know that attracts a lot of people from Cumbria in particular and elsewhere into that very busy shopping centre. We patrol the car parks, we engage with people, we'll have a chat. If we do acknowledge and identify that somebody has perhaps come up from Cumbria or further afield in a sort of higher lockdown area, we will have a chat with them and encourage them to return home. As a last resort, we'll issue a fixed penalty ticket, certainly. And again, we've got a very good relationship with the management team and the security team in Gretna Gateway, and we engage with them on a weekly basis just to keep an eye on trends, to see what the local appetite is, or the local perceptions are, I should say, about who and how many people are coming into that sort of shopping centre. I can't ignore, and I absolutely support the local concerns in Gretna, particularly amongst the communities in Gretna who are doing the right thing, restricting themselves in accordance with the guidelines and doing the right thing, only to potentially have that overridden by people moving into the Gretna Gateway that may be bringing the sort of virus into the area despite the best efforts of local communities. So we're very conscious of that, hence our increased activity around about areas like the Gretna Gateway. But if there's any perception that we may engage in hard borders or road checks or proactive stop checks of vehicles, we're not doing that for all the reasons I hope I've articulated.
Okay, very comprehensive, Stephen, thank you. And I think we'll look out for the updated contact list as well, that you'll be able to share with elected members. I've got Councillor Ian Carruthers next.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Stephen, for, I suppose, your very comprehensive answers today. You've pretty much answered the question I was going to ask, really, when you've answered Councillor Marshall's question. There's only one smaller piece of information I would have asked. It wasn't about the actual report, it's about how you've coped between the lockdown, March 23rd, up until now, the pressures that's put on police, but you've fairly answered all of them. The only other piece I would have asked for was, in as far as workforce, say, related stress, sickness, absence, stuff like that, I just wondered, because we hear things, we talk to different people, so I just wonder what levels are they at within the police force, especially in Annandale and Eskdale. Maybe it will be further and broader across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway you have to talk about. If that information is there, even just in general terms, I'd be keen to hear that as well. But anything else you've certainly covered. Thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor, and again, thanks for considering the welfare of our officers, because you're right, it can be quite a sort of stressful and challenging environment. without trying to sound a bit silly about it, I'm actually quite proud of our local workforce, and really proud actually. I think we have a team who are highly professional, really dedicated to our local communities, and continue to do that throughout the months of COVID as well, despite some of the challenges. Clearly, what we try and do is identify those who may have perhaps vulnerable people at home or within their own immediate family network, that should COVID find their way into that household, may become really quite tragic. And I'll maybe include the likes of pregnancies and that type of thing involved in that sort of bracket as well. So where would you identify that there's some real pressure points or some real tangible risks, if that makes sense, about if an officer was to pick up COVID, even if they were asymptomatic themselves, if they took that home, what would the impact be in their wider family? We have taken steps to allow, where we can, people to work from home, perhaps doing some of the work from a laptop, for example, and using or taking advantage of some of the latest technology that we have in relation to that. So we have worked very flexibly with our workforce. We've allowed a bit of flexibility around about shift start and finishing times, just to make sure that we don't unnecessarily double up in offices. We've taken steps, believe it or not, to limit the number of people who are allowed to work in certain offices as well, and trying to spread out people amongst the stations to make sure that they keep themselves safe, in as much as they actually need to respond to community concerns too. And the bottom line is, if we didn't do that, the likelihood would be that we would then suffer much more and heavier abstractions, which would then really erode our capacity to actually do the job we want to do for local communities. So far, Councillor, that has been a successful strategy. We have kept the vast majority of our workforce at work. There have been some challenges in relation to trying to sort of manage some of the demand that we see. Increasing sort of areas of business that we are seeing just now include vulnerability and people, concern for persons, children, e-crime, that type of thing, and that brings its own pressures along with the domestic assault scenario that we talk about routinely. So there are some increasing areas of business which take a huge amount of time to try and resolve, not just in sole isolation as an agency, but also in conjunction with the partners too. So workforce stresses is always going to be there. It's the very nature of our business, but our staff deal with that well. We've got a lot of coping mechanisms within our organisation to help people cope with that. And what I think we're very good at in Dumfries and Galloway is that we recognise that our officers are people, first and foremost, not just robots that attend to incidents. We recognise them as people, we deal with them as people, and try and support them in the workplace as best we can, and their wider families too. So a positive picture for me. I am proud of what we do in Dumfries and Galloway. I'm proud of our people. The vast majority of people we have in Dumfries and Galloway is still the same crew that we had prior to the conception of Police Scotland, and for me that's girls and guys in uniform who live in our communities, that are serving our communities locally, and I think we see the benefit of that on a daily basis.
Thanks very much,
Stephen. Thanks, Chair, for that answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for that. Clearly a compassionate approach to managing the workforce. I've got Councillor Brodie. I think you had a second question before I let Councillors Fairbairn and McGregor in.
You want me to go first, or yeah?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to wish Stephen all the best in his forthcoming retirement. There is one matter which I'd like him to take care of before he goes off in March. Normally I would have a word after the meeting outside the room, but we've spoke about this before. You mentioned the Gretna Police Station closing, and there's an expectation from the people in the local area that the station sign, which is a part for police station sign, which is part of the history of the area, would be retained and put on display in the area. So we spoke about it, and we're still trying to get that sign. Is there any progress on that?
That'll be a mission for me before I retire in March, if I Councillor. I too am absolutely committed to seeing that sign remain locally in that community. So I'll take a wee action today just to push that on. I'd actually spoken to our estates team about that. It must be a number of months ago now, the last time we spoke about that, and I was assured that the sign had been taken care of, secured, but had for some reason found its way to Stranraer. Now I'm not sure if that was misinformation or not, but it's a good reminder, Councillor, and I'll make that a personal mission just to make sure I find out where exactly that sign is and make sure it stays in the local community.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Fairbairn.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Stephen, not to steal the kind of limelight here for Councillor Brodie, but you didn't make a very good job of retaining your bell in your church, Councillor Brodie, so you're wanting a sign, but sorry, I had to get that in. Stephen, thanks very much for a very comprehensive report. And it's just really to congratulate you and the team on, it's been touched on before, but the fantastic proactive policing on the A74, M74 corridor, the detection and supply and disruption of drugs coming into the area. I think Councillor Carruthers really touched on it previous to that. It was really in relation to morale amongst the ranks, but I think you've really answered that, Stephen, so I really thank you for that. And I wish you all the best for your future retirement. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, Stephen. I'll echo my colleagues and wish you all the very best as you go into retirement, and thank you personally for your support over your tenure. It's been a pleasure working with you. You touched a wee bit on antisocial behaviour, and I'm very aware that youth services and youth work and activities within the community have dried up in recent months for a lot of the kids in our community. But I'm also very aware of a rise in what I would call low-level antisocial behaviour, particularly in Ecclefechan. And in isolation, I think each individual incident would be treated as a low-level antisocial behaviour. But we're now reaching a stage where we've got a lot of low-level antisocial behaviour. I'm not going to read them all out to you. I can email you later, but it's sort of terrorising older people in the village, smashing windows, moving things around the village that cause sort of danger in the streets. And it would appear to be a very small number of individuals who are known in the village. And my plea is, can we just increase the police presence for a little while and maybe work with the community safety team just to try and get this one sort of nipped in the bud as such, because there is quite a lot of growing anxiety within the community, I think, particularly because they know who the kids are. So it's really a plea to just say, can we up our presence a little bit at the moment, accepting that, as I say, the kids don't have an awful lot to do at the moment, so it's very difficult, but I'm sure you're aware of the instance. But thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No, definitely, Councillor. I'll just respond very quickly to that, and again, I'll make a pledge just to make sure we do that. I do challenge on a fairly regular basis, Councillor, just our local sergeants, to make sure that we're not dealing with things in isolation or what I would call transactional policing. We need to be a bit more intelligent than that, and if there are links and common themes, we need to be capturing that very, very early, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. Antisocial behaviour at its lowest level can all too quickly accelerate into more serious issues, drugs and violence as well, and I'm not, or the connection between those three elements is not lost on me. So I think it's an absolutely valid point to raise. I thank you for it, and I'll have a chat with our local sergeants operating in your area just to make sure we get on top of that and put it to bed before it escalates into something more significant.
That's great. And I think just on that point, Stephen, if you could keep the 4 elected members sort of informed of what actions are being taken, I think that would be really useful, because we are reaching a stage now where, as I say, windows in elderly people's properties are being smashed. There was tyres slashed on the high street the other day. It's very abnormal behaviour for such a lovely wee village. But I think if you could just sort of keep us all in the loop with that, it would be much appreciated. Yeah. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other members waiting to speak, so I think we can fairly say that we've scrutinised the report, and we've certainly had a thorough update in terms of what's happened since the end of the reporting period, and taken great assurance about the welfare of the staff as well. So I think we can safely sort of go to the recommendations. I would like to thank, obviously a number of members have done so already, but just obviously to thank you, Stephen, for your service to the area and the region, and for your continued support to all the elected members and the community. So with that, thank you. Although we might still get you yet, because I think we have an area committee scheduled for March, but I don't know if it'll just be on the cusp of when you actually manage to escape, as it were. So, but either way, the very best wishes, and I think every success to your future ventures. So thanks again for your time today. Members, are we happy to agree the recommendations? I'll take that silence as confirmation that we do. So with that, thank you very much, Archie. With that, we'll move on then to item number 5.
Thank you.
So we have the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service report on for Annandale and Eskdale for 1st of April 2019 to 31st of March 2020. In the report, you'll see there's a number of positives to draw on, which I'm sure members will highlight in any subsequent discussion. And it's pleasing to note that our area is having the lowest ratio of accidental dwelling fires in the region. It's also reassuring that prevention and protection work remains a high priority for the service, and the service continues to transform and become more involved in safety in the home. Members might want to understand a bit more about how COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on the approach being taken to home fire safety. But before I hand over to members, I wondered if I could highlight the number of unwanted fire alarm signals in our area, and in particular the Annandale North Ward, which has a much higher instance compared to the two other Annandale wards. I wonder if there's any particular reason for this difference locally. I believe we have Commander Scott Irving here available on Teams to assist members with any questions. Good morning, Scott. Is there anything you'd like to add to the report or to that question?
Good morning, Chair. Can you everybody hear me?
Yeah, there's a bit of background noise, but I can hear you, I think, okay.
Okay. Firstly, Chair, thank you for the introduction. Pleased, obviously, to present the report. In relation to the question regarding the increase in unwanted fire alarm signals in the Annandale North area, I'd just like to highlight the fact to all the members that obviously, in relation to Annandale North, much of that activity centres around the Lockerbie area. Obviously, you'll appreciate the Lockerbie area is an industrial kind of hub within Annandale and Eskdale. So what we see there is probably a proportionate reflection of the types of industry and the numbers of industry in and around that area. So as a consequence, we will see an increase, or we're likely to see an increase because of the numbers of commercial premises in that area. So I think it's a true reflection of the types of industry in and around the Lockerbie area. So that's why Annandale North maybe presents as higher than the other two areas within Annandale and Eskdale. But I'm happy to take any further questions on that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate there is a wee bit of background noise there, but I think we're just sort of still managing to hear you. I'll open it up to members if they've got any comments or questions. I can't see any at the moment, although Councillor Dryby, your hand's up, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and obviously thanks very much for this report. Again, it's for 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020, so it's it's 6 months ago, and there have been, I would imagine, some updates to see. Again, coming back to the unintentional fire alarms and other issues such as road traffic collisions, things like that. We have seen that increase, and we've seen that with the report previously with police, fire and rescue. I just wonder if there is obviously the retained firefighting crew have their own jobs to go to as well as their own, and it's coming back to what Councillor Carruthers mentioned earlier on about the welfare of our staff within the area, and how are things with the retained firefighters in Annandale and Eskdale, considering the difference of COVID as well. So perhaps you can update us on that side of things. But secondly, there's obviously the new legislation which has been delayed for a couple of months. And was there any sort of actions going on with any sort of RSLs or like that to try and bring it in for the original date? And is that work carrying on?
Thanks, actually. Scott, if it's okay if you're able to answer the questions directly rather than go through myself, if that's okay. Are you able to answer that one?
Yes, I'll answer Councillor Driver directly. So, in relation to our retained college, yes, as already previously discussed, our college in Police Scotland, it is an unusual time for all our staff. We obviously are predominantly retained, so the nature of that is that people work in their primary employment, and obviously their fire service role is a secondary role. So the fire service has done a lot of work throughout the pandemic to try and ensure and safeguard the health and well-being of our staff in their activities. Obviously, we are an emergency response service, so the nature of activity is going to put our crews directly in harm's way. Because we're dealing with members of the public, so we don't know if these individuals are asymptomatic, whether they're positive for COVID-19. and obviously the potential of contracting coronavirus and then coming back into the home environment and back into the workplace is a significant risk. So the service has undertaken a lot of activity to try and put in mitigation to limit the potential of that from happening. And again, just to give the members just an insight, things that we've done locally and nationally is we've introduced split drill nights. So what we've done is we've taken our crewing level on a retain station and we've effectively split them into 2 groups for a 1 pump station. And then for a 2 pump station, we've split them into 3 groups, effectively creating bubbles, and you'll be familiar with that term. So that's obviously minimising or trying to minimise the potential cross-contamination of individuals when they respond to stations. This is obviously backed up with PPE, so we've increased our PPE levels. We've created a suite of documents which we refer to as task cards. Those task cards are used to provide operational and technical guidance to our crews to ensure that when they come across a particular situation, so for example, dealing with a positive casualty, an unconscious casualty, it talks about the level of PPE, the processes that we need to do for engaging with that individual, the numbers of people that would be involved in that process. So the service has done examples of this type of work for all elements of our work to try and put in mitigation so that our staff are safe as reasonably practical when they engage with the community. Obviously, that is also underpinned by everything that we do is obviously based on risk assessments. So again, all our risk assessments for our activities have been reviewed and have been updated to reflect the control measures that we've been put in place in dealing with the pandemic and COVID-19. And again, that has been updated recently with the Scottish Government tiers. So we have the 4-tier system obviously in place in Scotland. So the service has issued guidance that is specific to each department within the fire service. So whether that's an operational crews, whether that's a fire safety officers, about the types of controls they would need to apply depending on what tier they're in. So there is a lot of work that has been done by the service to put in safeguards and mitigation to protect our staff. So I'm happy to take any questions on those points.
No, that's fine, Chair. The only other point was about the delay in the smoke alarms and things like that.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. What I'd like to do is I'll pass you on to my colleague Susan Maxwell. She'll be able to provide you a more detailed update in regards to that question. Susan.
That's good. Thanks for the question regarding the smoke alarm legislation. Obviously, you know that it's been put back by Scottish Government for 12 months now. At the moment, they've provided £880,000 to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service to assist with helping making sure the most vulnerable are covered by this new legislation. Out of that amount, Dumfries and Galloway got £22,500, which has been spent on the Wi-Fi systems. The way it'll work for us is that we'll never leave anybody without a smoke alarm. And when we go around to do home fire safety visits, we have people in high risk, medium risk and low risk. Now, all through the pandemic, me and my team have been out visiting the high-risk people, fitting up smoke alarms, everything like that. And as of January 2021, we'll be starting to go out and fitting these Wi-Fi alarms to the most vulnerable in our society. We've got this amount, the £22,500 worth. If we need more, we'll get more because it's a Scottish resource. And if we need less, we provide that back to areas that need them as well. So that's the sort of position where we are just now, if that answers your question.
Yeah, Archie, does that help answer your question? So I think we might have lost Councillor Driver there temporarily. That's reassuring, Susan. Obviously, it's a question that's been sort of in the press and everything as well. So it's helpful to get that insight into the measures being taken to address it, particularly for the most vulnerable. And of course, the year delays obviously reduces a lot of anxiety for people who might otherwise be troubled by that. Councillor Fairbairn, I've got you next.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Susan. Thanks very much for that. It's just really encouraging to see the retained duty system and how it's manned, which is quite good. Good to see also there's no enforcement notices. But the thing that did concern me was, I see concern yourselves, I'm sure, was the kind of staff welfare issue. And I see acts of violence against Scottish Fire and Rescue staff was 3, which is not acceptable in any way or form. Can you kind of elaborate a wee bit on that? And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, you don't have to, but obviously was it serious injuries? What was the nature of the particular incidents? If you can possibly touch on that slightly, if that's possible.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fairbairn. Yes, any act of violence against our staff is unacceptable, and obviously with regards to the reporting year, that was an unusual year to have that many acts of violence. It's generally not something we experience in our geographical area, so last year was an exceptional year. With regards to those individual events, there was no serious injury sustained by those individuals. The acts of violence that from that year were around verbal abuse of our staff when carrying out their duties in terms of their fire service role. So through responding to incidents and dealing with situations, members of the public became verbally abusive and aggressive towards our staff, but there's not been any physical assault on staff. It's the verbal, the aggressions displayed as in pursuit of our duties. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Fairbairn, is that okay? Yeah, I think we've got Councillor Dryborough back online as well. I don't know if you had any follow-up to that question, Councillor Dryborough.
No, that was fine. Your apology, but I don't know what's going on. But I seem to be losing connection every couple of seconds at the moment. So if I have any more problems, I'll advise.
No problem. Thanks, Archie. I can't see any other questions or hands up at the moment, but I did have a question just about the human factors around the accidental dwelling fires. So there's a little metric there to do with both distraction and alcohol and drug impairment. I was just wondering if you could speak to the distraction figure a little bit more of 19%. I'm just sort of wondering, if there's a little icon there of a television, presumably. I'm just sort of wondering if we've got seeing a rise in terms of the impact of mobile devices and tablets and so forth, or if you've got any further information on that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass you on to my colleague Susan Maxwell. She can give you some more detail in regards to your question.
Thanks for the question. With regards to the accidental dwelling fires, a lot of them are in our sort of older community who tend to be maybe a wee bit more easily distracted at times by things. Some of it's alcohol issues and some of it's drug issues, and that's in the whole of the population. And I see that as a trend all over Dumfries and Galloway with regards to the accidental dwelling fires. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I don't have any further questions from members at this time. So with that, then I think we can I presume agree that we've scrutinised the report. So thanks to both of you for taking the questions, Scott and Susan. And if we, as members, go to the recommendations and agree that we have scrutinised the performance report for the period as detailed in Appendixes 1 and 2. Are we happy to agree?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. On to item 6 then. So the next report is the anti-poverty grant funding for 2020 to 21. Members are asked to consider the applications and the recommendations of the scoring panel. There were 8 applications received, and with one being considered ineligible, there are 7 applications for consideration today. The total amount for disbursement by this committee is £3,140. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. £33,140. And we have Wendy Jessen, our Council's Anti-Poverty Officer, available on Teams to assist members with any questions. So, Wendy, is there anything you'd like to add before I open it up to members?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I don't have anything else to add, and I'm very happy to answer any queries that any of the members might have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions on the report itself? A very comprehensive report then. So if we can then just go to the recommendations, which we're being asked to note that the total funding available, as agreed by Dumfries and Galloway Council, is as set out on paragraphs 3.1 to 3.4, and also to note Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee's anti-poverty grant funding priorities, criteria and eligibility as contained in Appendix 1. Are we happy to note 1 and 2 first?
Agreed.
Thank you. And then recommendation 3 is to consider the Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee's scoring panels process and recommendations as set out and agree the decisions as appropriate. Are we happy to do that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And finally, 4 is to note the new scoring panel scoring sheets as detailed in Appendix 4. Are we happy to note that?
Yep, agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks, Wendy, for attending today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, item 7 now is the proposed lease of the changing pavilion at Springfield Primary School to Springfield and Gretna Green Community Assets Trust. Members will note the previous partnership between the Council and the then Springfield Playing Field Committee, which led to the development of the primary school and changing pavilion. The Community Assets Trust, which owns and operates the Stormont Hall and playing field within the community, have requested a 10-year lease of the changing pavilion, which will allow the organisation to fulfil demand for changing facilities by sports organisations wishing to utilise the grass pitch. Recommendations of this committee will be presented to a future meeting of Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee for decision. We have Stuart Hamilton here as Ward Manager, and he's available to assist members with any questions. Stuart, can I invite you just to maybe add a few words if there's anything you'd like to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing further to add to the report, but happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you, Stuart. I can see, Archie, your hand's up.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Obviously, the Springfield Gretna Green Community Council are also supportive of this move as well, mainly because it's usually the same people that are actually on the trust. But this has been ongoing for a number of years now, and I'm sure other elected members from the ward will agree with this. They are certainly doing a lot on the sports field with regards wind farm grants and things like this. I think this would enhance what they are trying to do, get people back into health and well-being stuff and all of that. So my recommendation would be to go for the 10-year lease, and that would allow them to business plan for the next 10 years with the potential for that to be extended thereafter.
Okay, thanks, Archie. I don't know if we have any other actual speakers, so well, I think if we then just proceed to the recommendations just now, and we can get through some of the noting points. So,
Hello, Stuart.
oh, sorry,
Ronnie.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, Ronnie, I didn't see you there. I can see your hand up now. On you go.
You can see my hand up now. Hi, Stuart. Yeah, I think I'll just agree with what Archie's just said there, actually. You know, these organisations across there are very, very well run as well. So, I mean, I would back the option one, the same as Archie. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Sorry for missing you there. Okay, I definitely can't see anybody else's hands up. So, with that, then I can't see any other sort of alternative views. So, if we go to the recommendations. Clearly, number 1, Springfield and Gretna Green Community Asset Trust business plan as detailed for the lease of property at Springfield School. So we're effectively assuming we've considered that. If for the options available at recommendation 2, available to the Council as described, we're effectively agreeing preferred option 1. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Yep. So.
Yeah.
So we're effectively agreeing no conditions as outlined in option 1, and that would be the recommendation that then goes back to Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee. Happy to do so, members?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, now item 8 is the disposal of the land at Kilgreen Car Park in Langham, and this is to support installation of a new electricity substation for the rapid and fast charging of electrical vehicles. a little bit of background about this report. Effectively, we are now acting as a common good subcommittee, if you like, for Annandale and Eskdale. As you know, Langham doesn't have a specific common good subcommittee, nor does Moffat, for example, but Lockerbie and Lochmaben do. And I'll come on to that a wee bit later. But this report in itself was due to be presented to this committee in March, obviously, but that was cancelled at the time due to the COVID-19 restrictions. So we have it before us today. So we'll note that at 3.6, council officers had attended Langham using Westerkirk Community Council in July of 2019 to discuss the need and possibility of the development. Feedback from the Community Council then was positive and plans were progressed, concluding with a public consultation happening in February to March this year. So there was no representations made during that time. I'm mindful that the recommendations in front of us today, it's pending any representations, which would obviously have been appropriate for the March meeting. However, I would suggest that the recommendation to be agreed would be that it's surplus to requirements on the basis that there have been no representations, because that work's effectively been carried out. I'll maybe invite Stuart Hamilton to sort of add a few words, just to correct me basically if I made a mistake, but just for the benefit of members.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In consultation with the report author, the report was updated following the sort of resubmission for this committee, but the recommendation we didn't pick up at the time, just in terms of the wording. But I know that Grant Coulthard, I think, is on the call and is able to sort of outline the consultation work that's been undertaken. But effectively, there has been no representations, and therefore the recommendation can be updated so that you're being asked to declare it surplus on the basis that the necessary consultation work has been undertaken in line with common good property, and on that basis that there has been no representations from the appropriate community organisations.
Thank you, Stuart. Do we have Grant Coulthard here on Teams? Are you able to add anything to the report?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, apologies for the wording on the recommendation. It's just the report's been kept on getting brought forward and brought forward and brought forward. What I can say is that we've been keeping in touch with the Community Council throughout this time, along with some with elected members that attended the meeting in July 2019 to try and keep them updated. But hopefully now, if once an approval from your committee, we can then produce a tender to get to be published next week, with the work to start on January and be completed by the end of February. We're also using the local DPS framework so that we can help encourage local businesses to bid for the tender, as well as I understand there's a couple of national companies also on that same framework.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Grant. I don't know if there's any, do we have Gordon Bryce here available to perhaps add some value to the report as well?
Yeah, good morning, Chair, members. There's not a lot I can add to what Grant's saying, apart from the value that this will add to the local community and to fill the sort of strategic gap on the A7 between Hoyk and ourselves and D&G. It's also worth noting that this will be the single largest investment that we've made in the electric infrastructure to date. So it's a key strategic position, and it'll also offer a great deal of value to the community of Langham as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Archie Drybreath to speak. Archie?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair, and I'm sure Ronnie and Karen will probably back this as well. We have had some representations with regard the charging point at the Kiln Green and what's required here, and it's all been pretty positive, to tell the truth. The Community Council Chair is also part of the town centre regeneration group that actually works here as well, and they are all looking forward to this asset actually being in the Kiln Green car park. The requirement, of course, is to put a substation in place to get this equipment actually put on, and I would suggest that, you know, the biggest majority of the locals will support this. It also helps us, of course, with our climate emergency side.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Archie, and I think it's key. It's obviously a sort of national priority as well, and clearly it's a significant milestone on the route between Hoyk and Langham and the rest of Dumfries and Galway, for example, on the A7. So the only other real point I have on this, without anybody else wanting to come in to speak, is just what we're actually going to recommend to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee. Effectively, the recommendation would now read to agree that the 25 square metres of land at Kiln Green Car Park, Langham, is surplus to requirements on the basis that there have been no representations, or at least there's been no negative representations. I don't know how that should best be captured. Oh, and I'm now being told it doesn't go to FPT. Yes, okay, so there's no community asset transfer. However, there is something within it, because we're actually a common good subcommittee at this moment. There would have to be some mention to the consideration of whether there was a sale or a long-term lease for the land. I think the fashion now is for a long-term lease, I understand, but we'd have to delegate that to officers to then negotiate that. But obviously, if it's sold, it'll no longer be common good, and if it's leased, then it will remain common good. And I think that's maybe something we might want to at least consider. I don't know if we have, is it Andrew Maxwell here, possibly, to speak to that?
Andrew Maxwell is on the call, and I know that Andrew will be able to offer some advice in terms of the delegation, but in terms of the monetary value that members are being asked to agree, is that you're agreeing to declare it surplus, and beyond that point, officers are then delegated because the value is so nominal. The nominal fee would be generally £1, or if it was the 99-year lease, there would be no monetary value involved in that 99-year lease, and therefore there is the delegation to property services colleagues to basically conduct that transaction beyond this committee. But Andrew is on the call if you'd like to bring him in.
Thanks, Stuart. Hi, Andrew. Would you be able to maybe add to that?
No, what Stuart said is correct. It's a nominal piece of land, and the open market value wouldn't be very high. There wouldn't be much of a market for something like that. And normally, in terms of these disposals for things like electrical charging points, we wouldn't usually agree a 99-year lease at a nominal sum.
Okay, so thanks, Andrew. So that would effectively mean it would remain common good asset if that were the case, because it would still remain, the title would remain with the council effectively. Just on the back of that, and this is maybe a bugbear of my own, but I think it would be certainly of benefit to the area committee to bring back a report in terms of the wider common good assets that we have in Annandale and Eskdale. I appreciate there's a number, certainly in Annan, that have come to light. There's a number in Lockerbie and Lochmaben. We know about these because they have dedicated subcommittees for the common good. But the likes of Langham and Moffat, where there is known to be common good, yet we have no place to sort of list those or get a proper appraisal as an area committee of what actually we have as common good in our area. I think it would certainly be of benefit that we can agree to maybe ask for that report, so that ourselves as members and the wider community can actually see what is common good in the wider area. Would members be happy to attach that, or at least add that as a next recommendation, given that I think we're minded to agree
Chair, can I just come in on that particular point? 'Cause I'm of the belief that there is a report going to communities that shows the different common good assets that are in the different areas. I might be wrong, but I'm sure I saw on Teams or you know the different groups, the different pages that we have on the council's website, that there is a report going about common good assets to one of the particular committees.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that, Councillor Dryburgh. It may be that there is, but I think it would certainly be of relevance to Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee to know which of those assets pertain to Annandale and Eskdale. Andrew, Maxwell, if you're still there, I don't know if you can maybe give some insight into that.
We have been doing that for other areas within Dumfries and Galloway for the common good, and this has been raised before. We're doing we've done one for Dalbeattie, we're going to be doing one for Stranraer, we're going to be doing a report to Lockerbie and Lochmaben common good as well, detailing what assets are common good. So
Okay.
it wouldn't be a problem doing that.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that would certainly be helpful that we could see it in front of us at area committee, just so we've got that sort of local insight, if you like. If we're happy to agree that on that basis, Councillor Dryburgh, I see Councillor Ian Carruthers has got a hand up as well, so I'll just bring you in, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. It was been up for a wee while. It was particularly in regards to the points that you've raised. Is it for lease or is it for sale? I would agree. I think if it's for lease, that would be the better option because it's common good and how we move forward. My own view in regards to the other point you brought up was that each individual common good area should have a common good subcommittee. If nothing else, to look at their assets, their values, and potentially creating an income. Annan's been quite far advanced in common good. When I say that, in regards to that, we look at that at every single meeting. We consider how we can best react to the assets that we have and how we can potentially influence increasing the level of income. Like Langham and Moffat, you're referring to have no income, but that's not to say that couldn't change. The common good should exist, and the area committee should not be fulfilling that if there's an opportunity for the local active members to form that and be on it. Thanks, Chair. I do agree with what's being proposed is we should be leasing it because it's common good in particular, no selling it. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Councillor Carruthers. Yeah, I'm sort of led to believe that it's up to the area committee, and I think we did this at the outset, where we effectively agreed which common good subcommittees would meet. So if it turns out that there's a sufficient amount of asset for Langham, for example, or for Moffat, it could be that it's worth actually meeting as a standalone common good subcommittee for that area. Either way, it should be for the area committee to determine that, I think. So I think when the information comes back, we'll have a better sense of what there is and whether or not it's worth us doing that. So I'm open-minded about that. In terms of the lease or sale, I think the advice we seem to be getting is that the fashion now, or the tendency would be for it to be leased. I would certainly hope that we could recommend that would be the way forward if officers need authority to negotiate on that basis. I'd hope that wouldn't be a stumbling block, because obviously we want to see this business get done. So if the area committee is minded, then we could move towards agreeing that we agree that it's surplus to requirements, and that we would agree that it should be leased rather than sold in order to fulfil the project. Can I just get would that satisfy what's needed for the project to be implemented, Andrew, if you're still there?
For a lease, the Scottish Power or who's ever providing the substation will require a 99-year lease of the site.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, I'm sure. I don't know if any other members have further comment on that, or if we're happy to go along on that basis.
Happy going along that basis, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, I'll agree with that as well, Chair.
Okay.
Councillor J. Certainly agree with that.
Thanks, Ronnie. Anyone otherwise minded, or we'll just accept that that's the recommendation? Yep, okay, that's grand. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for your forbearance. The last item is number 9, which is the final report, and that's on the disposal of the old store at the Old Free Church, Dalton, principally used for the storage of Christmas lights, and the staging used at Annan Riding of the Marches and Langham Common Riding. Andrew Maxwell's hopefully still here, and he's available to assist members with any questions. Is there anything you'd like to add to this particular item, Andrew?
No, not at the moment. I've been in consultation with the Annan Rider of the Marches for looking for an alternative location for storage of the stage, and I've spoken to the Community Assets Manager for Annandale and Eskdale, and if we were looking for somewhere to store their equipment, it's possible that could be stored at the depot at Seaforth Avenue, probably along with the Christmas lights as well.
Okay, thank you. So do members have any questions on this?
Ian Curtis, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not seeing any hands up, but come on in, Ian, that's fine.
No, I did. Just by the time I put the hand up, it's just about the meeting could have been finished, I think, to try to find it sometimes. Just in regards to, so we're looking at the recommendation too, so note the store, the old free church is surplus to the council requirements. So I think it's been through the process. I've missed that if that's the case. Note that the community council groups, as per paragraph 3.6, and you've just touched in regards to that. But there's an issue there, obviously, with Anne riding the marches and the store, their particular assets there. I just wondered, I wouldn't have liked to have thought that this could be moved on, sold on as any detriment to Anne riding the marches. I just wanted the reassurance, Chair, I suppose, that that would be the case, that, okay, whatever happens to this in future years, that we come to some kind of solution with Anne riding the marches before we move it on, sell it on, if that's an option, unless I'm back up the wrong tree. That's what I'd be sure, because within the report it's not absolutely clear. It states that Anne riding the marches want to store them there if somewhere else isn't fine, but it looks like you're probably getting updated, Chair, as I speak.
Okay, I mean, Andrew did come in with some information there. I think, I presume that we can sort of say that we're noting 2.1 and 2.2. 2.3, effectively, are you advising that Annan riding the marches should be consulted with regard to potential community use and a sort of contingency, if you like, that they should be there should be no detriment to their storage of facilities somewhere, if not there?
Thanks, yeah. So what it's saying at 3.6 is that they've been consulted, I think. But it says if nothing can be found, that they wish to continue to use the store. That's nothing can be found from so that they can store their assets elsewhere. So just an update position in regards to have they found somewhere else. If they haven't, then I wouldn't want to see any detriment, Stephen. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, so I understand you now. Okay, so Andrew, is that something that you've made from your consultations with the group? Yep.
Certainly, well, what we've been discussing is the possibility that we could be looking at something like maybe shipping containers where they could actually store. When I spoke to the community asset manager for Annandale and Eskdale, she says there's certainly room there, and there's the possibility that we could be looking, at shipping containers for the actual stage itself, and probably for the Christmas tree lights too. So killing two birds with one stone. So I need to investigate that further to see, well, if I can find something that would be suitable for them to actually store the stage and the Christmas lights as well.
Okay, okay, that's useful to know. I suppose ultimately we'd be looking for an assurance that we will find a solution. It's just what the solution looks like. We maybe don't know 100% yet. Gail, I can see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just very briefly, because I'm looking at the map and trying to sort of visualise in Dalton where it is. Andrew, is it the quite bonny old church building as you're coming out of Dalton on the right-hand side heading to Lochmaben?
Yes, that's the one, Gail.
Right, okay. So to me, from memory, it would probably convert quite nicely into a house. Yeah, you're sort of shaking your head.
Well, that's what...
Surplus, would it go onto our normal disposal list?
Yes, it would follow the normal disposal process, and at the end we would advertise it in the open market to obtain best value. Right. Potentially, if we were going to market that, then potentially what we would look to do it as, as a residential accommodation, so to speak. We'd advertise it, and then it'd be up to the person that submitted the offer if they wanted to do, change it from what its current use is into residential. But that's probably what we'd expect someone to do for something like that.
Yeah, it's just that it does mention a community, Tai Chi Scotland are relatively interested in it, but they would obviously expect it for buttons, I would guess. So it's just to get that assurance that it would go on to our normal sort of selling process, because we're not very good at getting best consideration at times.
if the Tai Chi people, if the Tai Chi people were interested in it, then a report would have to be submitted to the Finance Transformation Procurement Committee as to why it should be sold to them at less than best consideration.
Yeah, that's fine. Good, excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Fairbairn, Doug?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Andrew. Really, it's just really kind of mirroring Gail, I suppose, to a degree. Tai Chi Scotland were interested in it. Andrew, has there been any other, I know it's kind of early days really, but has there been any other kind of rumblings in the local community in relation to maybe taking it over? Because I know there's a lot of groups in areas now that are keen to have heritage centres and, you know, like reflections in the past area and stuff like that, you know?
None at the moment, but this is the other reason why this report is to committee. If you can suggest any other local community groups that would show an interest in something like this.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I mean, aside from what's been discussed already and the efforts to secure alternative homes for the stuff that's been used at the moment for the riding of the marches, etc., and the lights, I think, in all honesty, if a group was really wanting to deal with this, I think they would have appeared by now. I can see Ronnie Tate's got his hand up though, so Ronnie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just Chair. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Ronnie.
You know, the storage problem, like, you know, I can highlight that we've got plenty of empty buildings across at Langham. I'm quite sure we could store them across here. You know, there is loads of buildings that I'm quite sure would be, you know, would take the situation on, actually. Okay.
No. Yeah, no, that's helpful, Ronnie. Thank you very much. I think we're not short of surplus assets at the moment, so that's a welcome offer. But yeah, I think if there was any groups that were wanting to come forward, they would probably have shown their head by now. I think it's detailed in the report. I've not heard anything from other members today, and I don't think we should really prolong the process if actually there's an opportunity to get this through the disposal process that we're all sort of agreed to. So with that then, can we note 2.1 and 2.2 and accept that at 2.3 there's no further groups that we want to consult with regards to potential community use, and that it will just be marketed following the normal disposal process of the council?